Introducing my 29-gallon pea puffer community tank. I've worked on this tank to set this up in such a way that the pea puffers and frankly all of the inhabitants will enjoy a symbiotic relationship and thrive in this living food web, deep sand substrate, a 29-gallon aquarium. Now, the pea puffers are definitely at the top of the food chain, but I also have included, there's 12 of them. I've included 6 coolie loaches, there's 3 killifish, there is 2 hillstream loaches, and there's 5 amano shrimp. And in addition to those large, more or less larger fishies, there are blackworms, there's scuds, there is snails to the best that they can be in there. And I have also included a food web through the macrofauna, ostracods, copepods, paramecium, infusoria, detritus worms, possibly planaria. I'm not worried about breeding in this tank. And the planaria is a very tasty snack for both the killifish and also the pea puffers. Now, the way I set this tank up is I used potting soil and peat moss and compost, about 2 inches of that underneath and then I capped along with some supplements, fertilizer supplements, and then I capped it with clay sand. After about 2 inches, I included leaf litter and humus that had been soaking in a bucket outside for a week, and then I capped that just a thin layer of sand. So honestly, it was for aesthetic purposes. I didn't want to show the leaf litter, but I wanted the benefits of the leaf litter and the humus, which made planting, as an afterthought, it made planting more difficult because sometimes I would be poking the plants into the soil and I would come across some resistance. But I was able to work around that, and I didn't want too much of a layer. I didn't want too many foreground plants simply because the coolie loaches have a tendency to, dig around the sand anyway. So I wanted larger plants. I collected the driftwood and the rocks from outside. The driftwood's actually from several different sources, and then I super glued them together, and I added rocks just to continue to keep it weighed down, and I'm impatient. And then I, filled it with water and put, just to, ensure that the the hardscape would settle. It actually turned the water black, dark black with all the tannins. And so I drained that, and then I filled it with water, and this time I planted, heavily planted. I may even add more. After the plants, I then seeded the tank with scuds and blackworms and snails, including Malaysian trumpet snails, which I believe have a fighting chance because they tend to dig into the substrate. So we'll have the benefit of snails that actually might survive the pea puffers' endless assault on these snails. I definitely have to continue to add snails. It's one of those populations that will just be completely wiped out if I don't continue to add snails. But I have so many snails that oftentimes a few of them get to hang around, potentially breed before, their lives are sacrificed for the sake of pure entertainment. And I set this up on purpose because I felt that if I were able to provide a living food web within this aquarium, it would divert the pea puffers' attention away from their other tank mates, because it's, for them it's far more interesting to chase scuds, which, once released into this tank, many of them are able to hide, but they're constantly breeding. So there's continuous source of entertainment and food for these pea puffers. There's 12 of them. I've been watching this tank very closely, and some of the issues that have come up is I have a huge amount of diatoms in this tank, just simply because the amount of driftwood. And that's to be expected, especially with such a new aquarium. This aquarium has probably been running for about 2 months now, about approximately 2 months. And it's still relatively new, and so the diatoms are still there, and it's essentially, it is working itself out. I did add a single flagfish. I don't know if I'm going to keep the flagfish in there. I just wanted to make sure that, any hair algae or any diatoms can at least be addressed. So far, I'm not seeing any aggression. I do see the interest of the pea puffers towards the shrimp, but the shrimp tend to work around it. And before I added the killifish, I actually had 15 chili rasboras in there, and the chili rasboras actually worked great with this aquarium, with these pea puffers. I was even able to observe the chilies literally taking black worms out of the mouth of pea puffers every once in a while. I just thought it was just a hoot to be able to observe that. There was clearly no fear, and the pea puffers were just sort of laissez-faire. I mean, they got their food, but they weren't vindictive about, another fish being faster than them. And the killies are actually faster than them, and I've also observed the killies eating snails. So essentially, it's the same diet. I just need to ensure that the food web continues to be alive and thriving. But in the meantime, I did remove the chili rasboras because the relationship wasn't working, but it was more for aesthetic purposes. I wanted a fish that really complemented the colors of this aquarium. And this aquarium doesn't really have reds. It has more oranges of the rocks and the sand, and different tones of green, or different layers of green and different textures. So I essentially, for this tank is not just about first and foremost, this tank is about a thriving and healthy community, so that these fish are happy and healthy and they are living their fullest life. But I also like to add, for my personal enjoyment, what I would consider aesthetically beautiful. Like, I want to also create a work of art. And so this is the result of both prioritizing the care of these fish, working through a challenge, which I thought perhaps we could work through if given a living food web. And it's also to prove that these pea puffers can work decently well in a community environment. Now, this tank I probably watch more than any other tank, just because I don't trust these little murder beans. Love them to pieces, but I do know that their nature can be, I don't trust their nature. And so I am constantly making sure that this relationship or the dynamics in this aquarium is still cohesive and peaceful. Well, I mean, these fish aren't naturally peaceful, but that they'll continue to work with each other. And I also watch it simply for enjoyment. I get so much enjoyment out of watching the dynamics in this tank and watching how these little fish interact with each other. And I'm very happy to show you footage, and I hope to continue to show you footage of what it's truly like to enjoy an aquarium, and for them to enjoy being cared for by us. It's just beautiful. I really appreciate you watching this video. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'm hoping to be able to put out more content soon, featuring this beautiful aquarium and many others that I've put together that feature a deep substrate and organic living food for the inhabitants.